we going to pretend that the MMORPG genre isn't already 90% dead? Well, that's the problem. And that's why I started with the video that I started kind of on my comeback tour for video content creation, is that even when the MMORPG genre hasn't been dead, I feel that we've been waiting, right? I literally feel like we've been waiting on the next MMO for too long. Like, for example, when I was playing ArcAge, I kind of was saying to myself, well, I'm playing ArcAge, well, I'm waiting on Black Desert, and then I'm playing Black Desert, and I'm waiting on Revelation Online, and then it's just the wait for the next wait for the next wait, and it really becomes, truthfully, we're just gonna keep waiting, right? We're just gonna keep waiting. How many people do you know that are playing an MMO that isn't World of Warcraft? If there was one Dota left in the world, we'd be like, oh my God, Dodos are alive. We'd be like, cool, there's one Dodo. Right. And I would say that to limit it to World of Warcraft is short-sighted, because you've really got your top set of games. And number one and number two, which change places, which I believe, and I don't have hard data to prove this, but number one and number two, I would say, are Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft. I will give credit where credit is due, and Asmongold is really responsible for a massive uptick in Final Fantasy XIV players, because when he put eyes on Final Fantasy XIV, that was millions and millions of people between his live streams and his videos that he did. Millions of people made the transition to World of Warcraft, right? I'm sorry, made the transition to Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV has had to add more servers. It's one of the only games in MMORPG history that has had to add more servers as they've gone. Now, Final Fantasy XIV is a little bit different, and you have to address the differences, right? You have to address the differences. Number one, it's a theme park game. It's completely theme park. It has only ever had one little sandboxy feature, which wasn't even really sandboxy. It was the illusion of player agency. It was the restoration of the Heavensward City. But the truth of the matter is, it was going to get completed whether or not a lot of players did it or a few players did it. The housing was going to get completed. Without a doubt, it was going to get finished. So Final Fantasy XIV doesn't really have any sandbox features. I mean, if we play word bingo or buzzword bingo, or we play mental gymnastics, can we fit the idea of taking a world boss and making it so nobody else can do that content for X number of hours? Is that sandboxy? And I would say no. There's like 4 or 5 MMOs maintaining a decent player base. Yeah, I would say your 4 or 5 MMOs maintaining a decent player base of 1 million or more players. You would have Final Fantasy XIV, you would have WoW, you would have Guild Wars 2, you would have ESO. I'm not even really sure who number 5 would be, if you're saying maintaining 1 million or more players. I really think we could be done. EVE Online, but EVE Online only has 27 to 32,000 concurrent players with about 66,000 people playing the game. EVE Online is a very successful niche game, but at some point we have to say an MMORPG, and this is what I started talking about in my video, right? What I talked about was massive, right? Because everybody knows you've got massive multiplayer online role-playing game. Multiplayer and massive is really RuneScape is 130,000 usual concurrent players. I don't think RuneScape has 1 million unique players every day. I don't think RuneScape has 1 million unique players every day. And I'm not trying to take anything away from RuneScape. Having 130,000 concurrent players is fucking amazing for a 20 some odd year old game. But if we're talking the M for massive, then we need to decide what's the benchmark for massive, right? And I think it falls into two things. How many total players is one half? The 130 is for both the RuneScapes. How many total players is half? And how many in each, and I'm going to say quote area, because area can divvy up. We can say how many people in each instance, how many people in each zone, how many people on each server, are the servers sharded? So we got to do area, because we can't just say per server, because BDO has what now? 2 servers with 10 shards each. Meanwhile, Final Fantasy XIV has 62 servers, each with upwards of 20,000 players per server. But if you want to talk about Final Fantasy XIV also has instanced servers that people go to for raids and dungeons, and then they get blended among all of the 8 servers in the data group. Am I back on the Ashes train? So the problem with this asking me is, am I back on the Ashes train? I've never been off the Ashes train. The problem is, number one, I allowed myself to get baited by the community. And as I've talked to people over the last 7 months, a lot of the people in the community just like to try to get under my skin. Number two, I followed Ashes, and I'm going to dangerously say I followed Ashes religiously for 6 years. I could tell you all of the different instances of change and how it was and how it is now. I could tell you what the plan was 2 steps ago. And the problem is that just became mentally exhausting. Following a game for 6 years, that's conceivably another 4 years from launch, was just mentally draining. When I get later on in this year, I'm going to watch all of the Ashes live streams from last July forward. I'm going to watch them all in a row. I'm going to relearn myself. I'm going to learn what I need to learn. I'm going to update Ashes 101, but I don't want to follow a game that conceivably could go into Alpha 2 in the fall and spend 12 to 18 months in Alpha 2 and see systems get tweaked and tuned 5 or 6 or 8 more times. And the other problem is, I don't really want to battle a group of people that have blind faith. Arguing with people that have blind faith, they don't want to take any constructive feedback. They don't want to give there to be any room for a differing opinion. They are absolute what the Star Wars problem is, the paradox of the Star Wars problem, where Obi-Wan Kenobi says to Anakin, only the Sith deal in absolutes, but that's an absolute, so the Jedi are all just like the Sith. If I say what if? Well, what if this? Well, what about this? Or what if this? Or this could be bad. Like, for example, I'm going to just jump to a development studio that's in my list of things I want to do today. But I wasn't planning on covering Eternal Tombs, right? I happened to make a video about Eternal Tombs because I wanted to talk about one feature of their game, right? And that one feature is, are events run by live staff a good MMO feature? I did a video on it. If you haven't seen this, it's I think it's a good video. But the big part was where I give Triune Studios, right, a lot of credit, is I did a video and they almost immediately responded to my concern. And my concern about the video was, is there going to be corruption in live game masters who are running live events? Triune Studio, they have the name of the game is Eternal Tombs, and their goal is to have game masters that generate events, that generate live events in real time. Our live staff members who help shape your experience with dynamic and unique events. They build out events in real time and help shape solo, group, guild, and server play. I think it's a fascinating idea, but I also think that, as we all know, we go back to Band of Brothers and EVE Online. The developers were in alliances and they nearly killed their own game. Band of Brothers was cheating, outright cheating. They were giving Tech 2 BPOs to their alliances. They were manipulating the lottery. So some studios have said developers can't play with their friends. They can't be in guilds. Some studios audit staff members' accounts. But the problem is human nature. Human nature is to be greedy. Human nature is to be corrupt. The studio said, we think it's a revolutionary idea. Of course, they talk about the good things. In terms of corruption, as in personal corruption, human corruption, all events are logged and reviewed. We plan on having some data and analytics around events and participate in the events so we can do some analysis. This is an area we are keenly aware of potentially having integrity issues, but we will be vigilant. The amount of scrutiny will scale with the game itself. See, I like a studio that outright doesn't dismiss a concern, right? I like a studio that when you call them out on something, they don't get offended that you're calling them out. Because in the video I said, this is a great thing. This is what we've been looking for. Other games have done this in the past. Neverwinter Nights allowed players to create events. What the hell was the name of the game? That was old. Nexus Kingdom of the Winds allows GMs to create real-time events. And there's always going to be the opportunity for corruption, personal corruption, not a game mechanic, but I spawn events for my friends. I spawn events for this guild because this guild, it talks to me. I spawn events for this content creator because this content creator makes content for the game, and I want to make sure that it's a symbiotic relationship. I love when a studio turns around and says, yes, we acknowledge this. We acknowledge your concern. We don't dismiss your concern. We acknowledge your concern. Here's some of the ways we're going to mitigate it. People that have to get defensive are people that aren't confident your concerns won't happen. When people don't get defensive about criticism, it means they believe that they already have it in check and they don't have to worry about it. Yeah, or when people don't get defensive about criticism, it means, holy shit, you pointed out a flaw. You pointed out a flaw in something we didn't think of. Because guess what? You can have somebody that's the very best at what they do something, whatever it is, and they can make a mistake. I have really good composers that make all of the music for my channel. I had a composer make a mistake. He wasn't hearing it. I sent it back to him and I said, you have a hiccup here. He listened to it again. He's like, sorry, I wasn't hearing it. It doesn't matter how good you are. Like I've had my work critiqued by peers and they say you could do better. Yeah, you're right. You could do this. Yes. BCG just gave me a piece of advice. A good friend of mine who's a content creator and a social media person, he just gave me a piece of advice and I said, you know what? That's a great piece of advice. I think that part of what has happened with the MMORPG genre is that developers and can we just cut the crap where everybody's companies are businesses. Companies exist to make profit. Period. If you're not making profit, you're not keeping the lights on, you're not keeping the servers on, you're not keeping the payroll checks running, you're not getting paid, you're not eating, you're not paying your rent. The difference is how much profit. The difference really boils down to, do I need to make a bare minimum amount of profit so I can continue developing and continue to have a life? Or am I going to do a World of Warcraft or a try on Worlds? And am I just going to try to fist fuck the consumer base and get every penny I can out of them? Remember, I don't know, it's going on now about 6 or 7 years, maybe more. Scott Hartzman tried to defend $100 mount in Rift. Dude, it's $100 mount. You're not defending that. You're not. You could try to defend it, but you're not going to defend $100 mount. And that kind of takes us away from, is the MMORPG genre dying, into a sub discussion of why is the MMORPG genre dying? Greed, corporate greed. Because remember, these companies are going to look at it and say, well, how much can we make? And where gamers have to be a little bit forgiving is, what about the projects that the company has shelved that cost them $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, $5 million to fund? They got to make their money back on those as well. For example, Amazon Game Studios. Let's just pop over to their really the only game they have going. Amazon Game Studios has never really had a success in New World. New World has never really been successful, right? Now, some people would say the all-time peak of 913,000 gives it success. Okay, an all-time peak of 913,000. But, right? The peak players was 913,000, but the average was 410. The next month, the peak was only 357 with an average of 155. The very next month, the peak was below the average as we hit 83. Then we got down to, the 20s, the teens. Oh my God, the big revamp, the what's gonna save the game? 60,000 with a peak of 137, right? Now, the next month you had a peak above the average, but then every month since, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Amazon Game Studios was run by the book guy. Amazon Game Studios was under the direction, under the leadership, under the management of the guy who had successfully built the Amazon store, the book department. When did MMORPGs stop being run by people who are gamers? Gamers first and foremost, right? Mr. Valentine asked me, are you waiting for a new MMO that isn't released early and incomplete? Yes, that is absolutely what I am waiting for, right? I can't think of the last time a game launched in a good state. Star Wars: The Old Republic launched with some really great features, but then like 38 to 42 days into the game, you were on weekly raid maintenance mode. BioWare admitted, they said, well, we thought players would play through the storyline on 4 to 8 characters. How out of touch was BioWare with the gamer community? Sure, they thought that as Star Wars fans would run through the main story quest of each of the classes, right? I played through my Sith Inquisitor, and then I played through the Bounty Hunter, and then I started playing through the Stormtrooper, but then the next game came out. And yeah, which were not connected at all, by the way. Exactly. Which, other than building your legacy, there was no real motivation to run all other characters except to build your legacy, which you could build your legacy just fine grinding on your max level character. That's why I think this idea, right? That's why I think this kind of revolutionary idea of live events being run by staff is, I think it's a good idea, right? I think the idea of events run by live staff is a great idea, and the video's down below. If you want to know more, if you want to check out Eternal Tombs' video, I've got it linked in there too. Because one of the big problems I've said, ESO is not, how can I say this? ESO is a great single player game. It's a great RPG. ESO is a great role-playing game. There's a ton of stuff to do. And when I say there's a ton of stuff to do in ESO, I mean, there's a ton of stuff to do if you slow down, right? If you slow down, if you read all of the books, right? If you're an ESO lore fan, you read the books, there's stories, there's hints, there's clues, right? But ESO's combat is what people complain about. Now, I don't particularly care about the combat. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's gotten better. But it's just like a complaint somebody had about me with Mortal Online 2. What I said about Mortal Online 2 the other day was that I thought the combat was bad. And somebody watched my video, and the only thing they took out of my entire video that I did was that I said Mortal Online 2's combat was bad. That's what they took out of the video. And I responded on my YouTube with, well, the problem is the combat is bad because the developer is changing the combat. So if the combat was good, the developer wouldn't be changing the combat. If the developer is changing the combat, then the developer acknowledges the combat's not good. Now, is it possible? Is there a possibility that, right, the combat, right, is good? And we're going to say this is a fact, although good is always subjective. The combat is good, but not popular. And the answer to that is yes, right? It is possible that the combat is good, but not popular. But then the developer needs to make a decision. Can you sustain your game with these numbers? Can you sustain your game on 900 per 24-hour peak? And then, as you know, in order to give us a more accurate feel of how many players play, we times this by 3, right? Oops. We times this by 3 because there's 24 hours in a day. There's 3 major gaming time zones, right? So we divide it by, or we times it by 3, so that we kind of cover the gaming. If you want the absolute cap of people that played in the day, times it by 8. There's 24 hours in a day. A gaming session is 3 hours. So you have about 8 gaming sessions as the globe turns. And then people say to me, well, Jay, why do you want to give a higher ceiling? Because I want to have absolute, we know this is the absolute minimum, but we want to make sure that credit is given where credit is due. So there's, you know, 2,700 people to 7,200 people are playing Mortal Online 2 in any given day. I wish Steam would just add another category of data tracking that Steam charts could pull, and it would just be unique users in 24-hour period. I really wish they would make that a mineable figure so we could know how many people are playing a particular game in a day and we could talk about it. I think a lot of gamers have given up on the idea of MMOs because they've seen too many MMOs either fail, never launch at all, or launch and almost immediately enter a stagnant state. There aren't enough gamers interested in MMOs without stealing players from other MMOs, which means the only way another MMO is going to break 1 million players is by being another theme park. And then somebody said, do you really think a theme park would be the only way? If you're going to steal 1 million players away from WoW, Final Fantasy 14, Guild Wars 2, then they're all theme park games. So it's what those players want. Yes. So, and then you said, you know, so many people who go between all three of those year to year based on what their friends are going to as well. See, there's the problem. And you've hit the nail on the head. You have crushed it. The MMORPG genre, I think, is dying. And here's why I think it's dying. Here's MMORPG players, right? And you're absolutely right. So here's our box. So let's make our box bigger. And so we've got MMORPG players. And let's just put the number at 10 million. Let's say there's 10 million regular MMORPG players. And we're going to give WoW 5 of that, just for simplicity. And we're going to give Final Fantasy 14, we're going to give them 4 million of that. And then ESO and Guild Wars 2, we're going to give them each 500,000. Now, I'm just for the example. The problem is we need a new game to come out. We need new game XYZ to come out, and we need it to bring in players from outside of the pool. What we don't need is that game to pull its player base from all the existing games already, which is why some MMORPGs are trying to push lines like, how do we bring first person and third person shooter fans into the genre? How do we get people who play Fortnite to come play XYZ game? How do we get, right, you know what I'm saying? How do we get mobile players to come play MMORPGs? But that means you have to find gamers that already gave up on MMOs and convince them that XYZ is not going to turn out like all the other MMOs. Right. A lot of games are like that now. Somewhere along the way, MMOs decided it was best to cater to, but what about the solo player? And now MMORPGs are really long RPGs with people you don't talk to and just join pugs now and then. Right, exactly. And at least 2 out of the 3 of those games, you've done endgame rating. Old groups versus new players versus solo. I hate interaction players in MMORPGs is so tough. And now you've got games like Final Fantasy 14, which I would argue is no longer what we thought of as an MMORPG. Because Final Fantasy, I need to get this pinned on here permanently. So Final Fantasy, what you have is you have a data center and you have 8 servers in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then what you have is you have an instance server. And what you do is if you want to do content, you just go into your little duty finder, you pop open a box, and it says duty finder, and it says, I forgot what it says, enter queue. I don't know what the button at the bottom says. You hit that button. If this is an 8-person raid, you could literally end up with one person from each server in your data center. You spend 7 minutes together doing the raid, and then you fuck off and leave. Back in the day, when you, back in my day, son. Well, back in my day, we had this thing where you had a tank and you had a damage dealer, and they weren't in a guild, so they were looking for a healer and 2 other damage dealers to try to form a static party with. They tried to form a static party so that they could do content without having to shout forever looking for healer. Because you know what friends did, and you all know this because you had to do it too. Friends would get together, right? Friends would get together. One friend would say, "I'll tank," right? Friend says, "I'll tank," and then you're like, "Okay." One friend says, "Well, if you'll tank, I'll heal." Okay, and then that's how it was. You're like, I'll tank, you heal, and we'll just pug our DPS. And that's what we had. And now there is no obligation to be social. There is absolutely no obligation at all to be social. You don't have to learn people's names. You don't have to remember who people are. You literally just say, nice knowing you. I'm not trying to shit on Final Fantasy 14 because it's the only MMO I play reliably right now. But Final Fantasy 14 is completely skillless. Final Fantasy 14 is completely skillless until you get to the extreme fights. And guess what? You don't pug the extreme fights. Looking for groups in PvP is how I've made most of my lifelong friends. You just got back into BDO as something to take on my time. Okay, so here's the question for you, because I love when people are here talking. Do you really want to be playing BDO? Or are you playing BDO because you're waiting for the next game to play? You played EQ1 back in the day and there was no cross-server play. If you were a dick, good luck finding a party again. Yes. Remember when there was no name changes, there was no server transfers? If you were a douche canoe, then you had the reputation of being a douche canoe and you couldn't get into parties. And then what would happen is, honestly, I had a list of people I would not party with in Final Fantasy 11. If I got invited to the party and they were in it, I would immediately drop and I would whisper back to the party leader, sorry, I don't party with that person. Currently, you're not playing anything and you're waiting. Well, if you're waiting for something and you like Crusader Kings 3, the new expansion pack is awesome. I'm going to be doing a video on it later this week. The new expansion pack is awesome. And if you don't like Crusader Kings 3, then I'm not sure if we can stay friends. So, you've been waiting for the next game to play since ArcH 3.5. Aside from that, I'm enjoying my new dive into BDO. Only though because of the random people who invited me to their guild and they've been great. Right. Had I not found this game, I probably would have stopped again. There it is. There is one of the biggest... that is probably one of the biggest things. If you didn't have that social interaction with the guild that got you to play, so you're not playing BDO because you like BDO, you're playing BDO because of the random group of people that invited you to the guild, so you're playing socially with those people, not that game. I feel like a survival MMO would work well just waiting for someone to make it. New World gave up on it and it was good. Well, that is kind of where PAX Day is. PAX Day is a survival world builder kind of game. The Paradox group had a lot of fun in PAX Day. I'm not going to lie and bullshit and say, I'm just going to be honest. I hit a depression spell when PAX Day came out. It came out at the wrong time of year for me. I have crippling depression in the month of November. I have a lot of death, and it's hard for me to process, even years later, all the deaths that I have to process from about the middle of November till the end of December. So my group had a hell of a good time in PAX Day. Survival games are kind of the new MMO. The market is oversaturated. No, the problem is the market isn't oversaturated with survival MMORPGs. I agree with you. Survival games are the new fix, but I thought New World would have been better if it had stuck to its original goal of a sandbox survival game. Yeah, there's no survival games, but there's no real survival MMORPG. I would say that the only thing close to a survival MMORPG is Rust. But Rust and DayZ, and even, you know, honestly, even Mortal Online 2, which I think is one of the best skill systems I've seen in a long time, right? But when you start talking about survival MMOs, the thing that will always kill survival MMOs is the player base. Because look at what happened to this one. Full loot drop with survival-esque elements. And what happened in testing? People just were douche canoes. You couldn't play Fractured Online because there was the one group that ran around in a group of 14, right? If you're running around in a group of 14 people in a full loot drop game, don't be surprised when the population of your game is only 900 people. Because what you're not understanding is people don't want to lose all their progress. Yeah, you got to have some out of the box thinking. You got to have loot drop rules, right? Personally, I think the years of dropping gear and dropping weapons have got to come to an end, because I don't see us moving forward from that. Albion does it best. No, I disagree with you. Albion has its own flaws. Albion's biggest flaw is its zone lines. Albion for years had the problem was you know exactly where to camp to catch the person because you know exactly where they have to go. See, Axel hits it on the head. Axel absolutely hits one of the things I believe on the head. You have to have durability loss and items breaking. If you want to have a healthy economy, items have to break. If items never break, then you don't have any stressors on the economy. What also happens then is people are more likely to accept, I'm in my best gear and I just got killed in the open world and I lost 10% of my durability on my best gear, not I just lost all my best gear. The repopulation was supposed to be an amazing game. I actually have the repopulation. I was a founder. I was a backer. It was crap. It was a good idea. It was supposed to be the next Star Wars Galaxies. The problem is too many of these companies are promising the world and they don't know how to make it happen. Crowfall We saw how Crowfall worked. Crowfall, let's just be honest, Crowfall was shit. It was like they had a lot of really good ideas. They sold people on a lot of really good ideas, and then they didn't even attempt to deliver on the really good ideas. They listened to the vocal minority. And the problem is, listening to the vocal minority, you need to make sure that the vocal minority is actually going to play your game. Crowfall was an alpha too long, and the vets ruined it by the devs listening to them, not us. Right. See, I know I'm the unpopular guy in a lot of the communities I'm in, because I look at things towards the masses. What do the masses want? And it's not about always catering to the masses. It's about catering to enough of the masses that you can keep the lights on, right? It's about catering to enough of the masses that you can keep your developers paid. You can keep the servers on. You can pay off all your loans. For example, and this is just the way I boil it down. If I'm going to feed a bunch of teenagers, if I'm going to have a bunch of teenagers come and do community service work for me, I could probably do pizza, because pizza's like universally accepted by teenagers. I could probably do burgers and fries, although there'll probably be a couple of these kids who say I don't eat meat. But I'm not going to serve sushi because the masses don't like raw fish. You have to read the room. You have to read the room. You have to read the genre. If World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV still have the two largest populations of players, don't dismiss it as sunk cost. Oh, people just play WoW because they've been playing WoW for 20 years. And don't dismiss it of, oh, well, people just really love the lore, right? Look at it as, what about these games? Because you can take and put a new spin on something, right? A few thousand players is pretty good for a free-to-access server for a game that's been dead for 10 plus years. You're right. It's still amazing to me a few of the older MMOs have managed to find private server communities that are healthy. Except the problem is that it's healthy because they don't have any of the cost. See, the Star Wars Galaxy and City of Heroes servers are allowed to exist because of American copyright law. But what they can't do is development. What they can't do by law is make a profit. They have to be run as not-for-profit organizations. They can only take in as much money as it takes to offset their costs. They can't turn it in, they can't make it profitable. And so you hit the nail on the head. Is it easy to take somebody else's project, make it free to play, free to access? Yeah, that's easy. What's difficult is taking Star Wars Galaxies, and fuck John Schmedley, but taking Star Wars Galaxies and keeping it profitable. That's the trick. Keeping your game, because remember, you don't want to be firing developers. You don't want to be laying off developers. You don't want to be living in debt. You have to be making money. It's like PGN Music hasn't released any music since New Year's Eve because I haven't really made any money. I haven't been able to do any side gigs. Obviously, not covering a video game. I don't get a lot of tips, bits, subs, and all that. Not making YouTube videos. I don't get a lot of advertising revenue. You know what I'm saying? You gotta make money. You gotta have money to make money, right? You gotta have money to make money. And now YouTube is getting all crazy where if you don't maintain your numbers, they demonetize your channel because they're trying to cut costs, right? My fingers were crossed so hard for Ashes of Creation, but I'm sitting on the fence with seeing it still progressing through alpha. I think Intrepid Studios I think Intrepid Studios is one of the few companies that has a chance of breathing life back into the MMORPG genre. However, I don't see Intrepid Studios and Ashes of Creation staying around long after other games come out. I think Ashes of Creation is going to have a lot of really good features, but I think other games are going to double down on similar features and make them the selling point. It's like you got to do a few things really well. You can't do everything sort of medium. I think where is it? I got it up here somewhere. I think the Riot MMO, right? I think the Riot MMO is going to be a huge game changer. And the reason why I think the Riot MMO is going to be a huge game changer is because Riot can afford to be. Because Riot is still making $1 billion on League of Legends. Riot is got so much money that Riot can turn around and they can divert money from League of Legends into their MMO. I'd love more info for the Riot MMO. Their story is huge, and I don't even like League of Legends. That's the thing. They have a ton of lore. They have a ton of backstory. They have a ton of character development. They have a lot of things, right? It's going to be very hard for any company to compete with the Riot MMO because it's going to be free to play. The sad truth is also games have more love behind them. Old games have more love behind them because they're designed for the fans. Now the fans are just gamers and they monetize literally every aspect of the game. Corporate greed has overpowered the art. Right. Sometimes what the masses want isn't necessarily what's good for the game. Like WoW back in the day wanted a quick way to form groups, so they added Group Finder, which destroyed the social side of the game. Now, I want to take what Ponzini said, and I want to break it apart. Because you kind of missed the point. Sometimes what the masses want isn't necessarily what is good for the game. Like WoW back in the day wanted a quick way to form groups, so they added Group Finder, which destroyed the social side of the game. Except as Axel says, Group Finder was good for a lot of people, right? Was the Group Finder a good thing? Maybe. Could they have made it easier to form groups without necessarily a Group Finder? Yes. For example, my way that what I detailed out, a sort of middle ground for having a Group Finder, right? Is this. So you've got a little village over here, right? And in the village, you have a little board that matches this board over here that we're going to draw on in a second, right? And then as long as you're in the radius of that board, you stay on it. So over here, you have the cave that's a dungeon, right? And the same board is linked together. So I'm going to go do some of this content out here in the woods. Here's the bridge. Over to Grandma's house we go. But I want to do this dungeon. So what I do is I go up to the board and I say, looking to do dungeon. And obviously I'm matched in both boards. And it says, depending on your game, I can tank, I can heal, I can DPS, or I can tank or heal. All depends on how you build your game. Now the thing is that people know I'm looking to do that. I'm looking to do that dungeon. So I'm a healer. So there's a healer looking to do the dungeon. Now, this guy over here just happens to be walking past the board, and he checks it, and he says, oh, I wonder who's doing. Oh, there's a healer looking to do dungeon. Hey, man, you want to do the dungeon? I got a couple of friends getting on in a little while. I think the problem is you can't have what the players wanted, which was bad, right? Is that I'm over here in the woods doing this piece of content, and there's a group goes up to the dungeon, and here's the 3 of them, and they need a healer. If they touch the board, I should not magic my ass to the dungeon. That's what kills the game. I think having a board in game that facilitates finding people is good. I don't think the matchmaker in WoW is what hurt WoW. I think the automatically teleporting to the dungeon is what hurt WoW. I also think part of WoW's problem, and this is a limitation of the technology from 20 years ago, the dungeon is just a thing that you do. But every dungeon should have quests attached to it. Every dungeon should have things at the end of it that lead you to the next adventure, right? And to model this against the theme park example, right? You go into the ride entrance. So here's the ride entrance. Otherwise known, and this is the queue, the Kawewe. I love the word queue. So as you're in the ride queue, you're seeing stuff. You're seeing, you know, there's wall art, or there's a TV in the corner, right? There's whatever that keeps you busy. That's all just the lead up to the ride, which is the dungeon, right? The problem we have is that when you finish the dungeon in 99% of the games, that's it. You're done. And you finish the dungeon and you can fast travel away and go to the next thing. Well, what you haven't done yet is you haven't done the other half of the exciting adventure, and you haven't gone through the gift shop, right? I don't think it makes sense to go into a dungeon 50 times and grind it. I think a change in game design is that you should only be able to do a dungeon one time. And then every other time you go through it, because we have to gamify it, you do the dungeon one time, and every other time you go through it, you have helper status, supporter status, mentor status. Because you've already done the dungeon. The dungeon should be like if you ever played Final Fantasy 11 and you did Chains of Promethea. Those dungeons were 2, 3, 4 hours long, and once you had done them, you never the fuck wanted to do them again. But you did, because if you wanted to get to C, you had to have people with you. But when you did one of the crags, right? You made sure every person that needed, like, you scheduled this thing days in advance. Okay, there's no cap to the number of people we can take with us. Or I think the cap was 18. We're not going in with 7 people. We're going in with 18 people, right? Every time WoW simplified something, they've removed a unique aspect of the player's game. An example would be warlocks summoning group members. I agree with you there. If the game had given you a reason to travel to the dungeon, but because there's no reason for you to travel to the dungeon, I don't have a problem with them letting you fast travel there. There should be a quest. There should be a why. A dungeon should be locked to you right? And I know we have to deal with gamification. A dungeon should be locked to you unless you in character know it's there. And I use the phrase in character because I was a LARPer. I was a LARP storyteller. I would have people come to me. It's called metagaming. It's called metagaming, aka cheesing. When you come to me and you tell me something and I say, that's great, how does your character know that? You as a player, like, I'm going to give you a great, where is it? There's a great section of this book. I'm a tabletop storyteller. There's a great section of this book it was one of the few times I saw this in a tabletop book. And it was, so I want to get their exact verbiage. It literally says right here in the book. Why can't I not turn that? For Game Master eyes only. For GM eyes only. It literally tells you when you start reading that, warning to players. Players should probably not read this section about the Sunjai because it may detract from the enjoyment of the adventures and ruin surprises the GM may have in store with you. On the other hand, Game Master should not despair if players do read this data because it should not destroy any gaming or scenario elements. Right? I loved that in the book. And my players respected it. My players bought that book when I was the Rift storyteller for my group. My players bought the book and they literally said, when are you going to run the content in that section so that we can be done with it as characters so we can go read it as players? If you stumble up to a dungeon, your character should see a blank wall because you haven't done the prerequisites of going into the dungeon. But now I saw somebody mention Lost Ark. Now all we have is lobby servers, Destiny, and I can't play Warframe because of my seizures. But all it is Q, excuse me, Q, do this dungeon, throw it away. Because the problem is, first of all, is we just roll back the problem with MMOs. What does everybody want to be in the MMO? They all want to be the guild leader. But why do they all want to be the guild leader? Because they all want the rewards of being a guild leader. Most guilds aren't led, they're managed. You've all been in that guild. Most guilds aren't led, they're managed. Most guilds have people at the top that are only doing it. You don't want to be a guild leader. Yeah, because Phelan has been a guild leader. Phelan is one of my officers in the games we play. Faye is an amazing... Faye could be a guild leader, without a doubt. Amazing guild leader. He ran our second town in Fractured. Faye likes to be able to jump in and get his hands dirty. Faye likes supporting a good leader because Faye doesn't want to do all the work. It's like I tell the joke, I was playing EVE Online, and in the middle of a war, I was running. I was the strategic commander. I wasn't the fleet commander. I wasn't the shot caller. I wasn't even on the field. I spent 3 fucking days of vacation playing 12, 16 hours a day with a setup like I have now, multiple monitors, notepads, sticky notes. And finally, after 3 fucking days, I said, fuck all you guys. And they all laughed. We were done for the night. I said, fuck all you guys. And they said, why? I said, I haven't fucking undocked in 3 days. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, I've been running logistics. I've been running the war effort for 3 fucking days from a space station. And the only thing I've been doing is spinning my ship. But that's sometimes what a leader has to do. I don't want to be in a guild that bullies me to play a certain way, but I also don't want to be in one that is stagnant declining. Well, right, but now you're trying to, now you're trying to find what I call the fucking mystical unicorn. You don't want to be in a guild that bullies me to play a certain way, but also don't want to be in one that's stagnant. Well, the problem is that in order to progress, you have to, and let's be honest, let's just cut the shit about, and like, let's not lie to ourselves. If you want to beat the tryhard sweaties, you got to run the builds that beat the tryhard sweaties, right? As much as I love to tell, Frostpaw's another one of my officers. He's like the officers of the most fucking bizarre builds ever. As much as I like to support people playing suboptimal builds, if I tell you you're running a suboptimal build and you say I acknowledge that, then I say, as long as you acknowledge you're running a suboptimal build, so you're healer 6 instead of healer 2, we're good. If I need 6 healers, you're number 6. You're my 6th phone call. Why are they getting the phone? Because they're running the optimal healing builds, right? Am I going to make Ashes content once it releases? I'm going to make Ashes content in the couple of months leading up to Alpha 2. I'm going to watch all the old live streams. I'm going to get caught up. I'm going to ask people for help. I'm going to ask people questions. I'm going to update Ashes 101, the website. The problem is, as I said earlier in the show, it was just so daunting to try to keep up with it, and it just wasn't fun anymore. It's like you say to people like, I don't think this is a good idea, like, and then people like beat you down. That's the reason why they beat you down, is because they don't want to hear the bad ideas, because they want to have plausible deniability. It's like I just got told about the Ashes commission system. I think it's a terrible idea. I don't think Intrepid Studios is looking at games in the past and the immediate fall off of player base when they lose their town, or they lose their castle, or they lose their holding. Because the way Ashes is set up, there's really no big difference between losing your town and losing your server in ArcAge. You lose all your housing, you lose all your investment, you lose all your time, effort, energy, most of your resources, if not all of your resources, whatever you didn't squirrel away. The problem is, people are going to say, I played this, now let me go play something else. And if I don't like the something else, I'll come back. Back in the day, certain things were okay. Back in the day, certain things were all right, because there was only, and I think we did this on the show once, if we count everything that could be counted, every single game that could be counted as an MMORPG back in the day, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, if we counted with the launch of WoW, we counted it up one day and we got 21 games. Every single thing that you could possibly count as an MMORPG, Anarchy Online, Ultima Online, Ragnarok Online, WoW, Final Fantasy 11, EverQuest, if you counted all the games, every single one, you got to like 21. I have like 15 games to talk about today as I bounce around. I have 15 on my screen, and that doesn't even count all the games. Well, you could do some stuff back in the day that pushed some lines because you didn't have a lot of options, right? There wasn't a lot of other places people could go. Like what are they gonna go do? What are they gonna go play? Well, now there's a shit ton. It's the age-old problem of money talks, bullshit walks, and the video game industry is lucrative, and the only way we'll ever see change on a large scale is if they stop making money doing what they're doing now. Exactly. You're nail on the head. Nail on the head. The only way you're going to see change in the MMORPG genre is if people vote with their wallets. And to liken it to the real world right now, why is McDonald's and Five Guys and Chipotle all lowering their prices? Because they're seeing less customers, because they have hit a price point that consumers won't pay. McDonald's is no longer poor people food. McDonald's is trying to move into like gourmet hamburgers. Look, you're not Red Robin. You're fucking McDonald's. You're the $5.99 meal. Now your meal's $11. People don't want to buy it, right? Said to my wife one day before I started my lifestyle change, I said, yeah, you can go to a restaurant and get a good burger for the same price. Exactly. My wife brought home McDonald's. I saw the receipt. It was $45 for 3 people for McDonald's. And I said, holy shit, that's 3 or 4 days of food from the market for me. That's a couple of steaks. So yesterday yesterday was a heavy carnivore day for me. I had a 1 pound New York strip steak. I had 1 pound New York strip steak, some potatoes, some asparagus, corn on the cob. And that's all I had yesterday was just one big meal, but a fucking 1 pound steak. And it was cheaper than a McDonald's meal. MMORPGs have to realize the same thing. MMORPGs have to realize if somebody comes up with the magic formula, they're going to get market share. I don't think, right? I don't think the next game we're expecting, I don't think Throne and Liberty is going to be it. Have you seen how poorly Throne and Liberty has been received in Korea? Throne and Liberty was not well received. And keep in mind, Throne and Liberty is the spiritual successor to Lineage 2. Throne and Liberty is absolutely not it. It's basically been abandoned in its nation of origin. It's flash in the pan at most. Right. Project TL went through so many different design changes because they didn't even know what they wanted to build, let alone what the world wants. How are you trying to build a game, right? And you don't know what the market's looking for. Do I feel like the gaming population in America has become more transient and sensitive about their content time than say 20 years ago? How would that affect your game design? Well, yes, to answer your first point, yes, absolutely. And here's the big problem, right? Gamers used to be married to their game. Gamers used to be married to their game. Now with free to play, because remember, what was free to play back in the day? Nothing. We didn't have free to play back in the day. We had a box price which came with 30 or 60-day subscription. Was RuneScape always free to play? Maple Story was. Was RuneScape always free to play? Okay. I didn't know. I know it's free to play now. I wasn't sure if it was always free to play. A lot of us used to game for 50, 60 or more hours a week. Now game for 20 or less hours a week. Right. But oddly enough, I game an awful lot, but I play games like Crusader Kings 3, where I've played this week alone. Hold on, I'm going to see just how many hours I played on Crusader Kings this week. This week alone, you're not going to tell me? I think I'm at 45 hours this week. I think I'm at 45 hours this week alone. Right? And that's not the only game I play. I think the gaming population in the West has become more transient because there's more options. Even playing MMOs, I noticed playing Arcade because the events were on the real world clock, we'd have 60 minutes until the next event. So people would be queuing up and I could hear like Call of Duty in their headset, or I could hear League of Legends in their headset. And I would be like, are you playing another game? I had a guy at a world boss once say, hold on, I've got like a minute left in my match. Gamers, our hardware allows us to multitask now. Back in the day, there was no fucking multitask. There was no fucking having 2 games open at one time. You were fucking praying that your computer could run the one game at a time you were playing. We were willing to give our time to games we enjoy, but we have to enjoy it a lot more nowadays to give it that amount of time. Yeah. I also think that we've had a problem as the MMORPG genre, and that problem is, right? The problem is ultimately we're now competing with MOBAs, right? We're now competing with first-person shooters. Praying to the machine god that my PC wouldn't crash from opening a browser to check the next step in a quest. Right. Or being really, really well off and, oh my God, having a router in my house so I could have 2 PCs on the internet at the same time. Yeah. When you could 2-box an MMO, everyone knew you had a badass rig, usually with a box fan venting it. Right, exactly. Now you've got people that can quad box. They don't even need friends. People used to laugh, I don't have the images anymore, of my Arcage radar system, right? A game that you probably need to play 10 hours a day will have a hard time competing with a game where you can play a 30-minute match. Yes, this is it. This is it exactly. This is the crux, right? Hold on. I don't know why my computer decides to move that off the screen. But this is the problem right here. How do you make an MMO that allows a person who can only play 2 hours a day to stay competitive with a person who can play 12 hours a day? No, it's not our attention span that's gone down. It's gamers are older. The original group of MMORPG gamers are older. They're grandparents and parents. They have careers, not jobs. They don't have the disposable time. I mean, shit. I thought about this the other day. The one semester in college I had, I only went to the building, right? I only went to the building for 5 hours a day, right? I was only in the building 15 hours a week. And my work study that paid for my schooling was easy as hell that semester. So I was probably spending 3 hours a day on the 3 days a week I went to the university reviewing applications and stuff. I didn't have another job. I wrote for the college newspaper. So I had Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays most of that semester to game. Periodically, I had to write a paper. Now I have all the time I want because I'm retired. But you hit the nail on the head. If you've got a game that it takes 3 hours, or let's take Arcage, for example, the Hiram rotation. If you miss your Hiram dailies, you start falling behind. So not only do you have to carve out a 2.5 hour window every single day to do your stuff, if you miss a day, you fall behind and there's no catch-up mechanic. Revelation Online, for as terrible as a game as it was, made it so you didn't have to do every event every day. If you didn't do an event today, you got 200 XP tomorrow and 300 XP the third day. Now, after 3 days, you didn't get any more. But that's one thing game developers need to keep in mind. How do I stay relevant? And I know people don't like to hear the dirty word known as gates. I know they don't want to hear the dirty word known as gates, but what has to happen here is you have to have gates. Here's your level of power, and here's your amount of time. And you have to figure out what is the reasonable amount of time to reach this level of power. So, without calling it what it is, to reach 25 units of power should not take more than 4 months. So what happens is, one player is going to do it in 3 weeks and is going to enjoy having 25 units of power for the extra 3 months. The other player is going to be on a steady course where they basically hit their level of power and then they didn't fall behind. And then, of course, you're going to have this player who is going to be below the curve, right? Because you're always going to have those people. There's not a good solution. There's not a good answer, because you're going to make somebody inherently unhappy. No matter what you do, you're going to make somebody unhappy. What about an MMO that doesn't care if you miss a day or a week? Trust that your players enjoy the game. Except the problem is, if it doesn't matter if you miss a day or a week, then nobody has to log in. See, it has to be an addiction. I have to be rewarded for logging in. EVE Online does a good job with making it so that you never fall behind, because if you can't log in for a week, you're going to Disney for 7 days. Just switch over one of your skill trains that's going to take 28 days to complete and knock 7 days off of a long-ass train. But the only way an MMO can be successful is as an addiction, yes. There has to be a why for me to log in every week. There has to be a why for me to log in every week. If there's not a why, or every day, if there's not a why for me to log in every day, I don't feel rewarded when I log in. Where's my dopamine hit? Where's my serotonin boost? Where's my feel good about it? Where's my feel good? Right? I like BDO's daily login system, where if you miss a day, if you log in on a weekend, you get 2 days if you're behind. That's a good system. That's a good system, because it allows you to... Do you get 2 days both days of the weekend? So it basically allows you to do 4 of 7. So you can do 4 of 7 on the weekend, which means out of 5, you only have to do 3. It's inherently a problem. MMOs are selling the same thing as tobacco companies. Yes. But guess what? Every product is that. Every product is that. Soda companies are that. Fast food places are that. Ice cream companies are that. Why do you buy ice cream? Because you like the taste. Why do you like the taste? Because of how it makes you feel. Why do you play WoW instead of Final Fantasy? Why do you play Final Fantasy instead of WoW? Why do you play Guild Wars? For enjoyment. Why do I have Deadpool on my shirt instead of a black t-shirt? Why do I drink tea instead of water? Because I like tea. Why do you like it? I like the taste. Yeah, your brain gets rewarded by it. That's what you're selling. I think Throne and Liberty is going to be hard pressed. I'm really shocked at Amazon Game Studios, though. Amazon Game Studios, first and foremost, is working on a new project in Unreal Engine 5. They're supposed to be publishing Throne and Liberty. They're supposed to be publishing Blue Protocol. And it's like Amazon Game Studios has not said anything. They just haven't said anything lately. I'm gonna see if they yeah, Amazon Game Studios has literally Amazon Games at Game Developer Conference 2020. We'll see you at GDC 2024. Meet the makers, Brad Guerrero, gameplay engineer on New World. I think these are really cool things. Season of the Guardian is coming to New World. Nobody cares. Lost Ark, nobody cares. But you notice there's no updates. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 articles this year. Single player games don't have to addict you though. You have fun with the game. You beat it, you're done. And maybe you replay it eventually if you really liked it. Correct, because what you're selling is a different thing. MMORPGs, you're selling a service. A single player game company does not give a shit if you finish the game or not. Single player game company does not give a shit if you ever even play the game. Their association, their relationship with you is over as soon as the transaction is over, right? If they're not planning on doing a sequel or a DLC, like Cyberpunk 2077 needed to be forthright with its audience because number one, they're doing a sequel to Cyberpunk 2077. Number two, they knew they were doing Phantom Liberty. Number three, they knew that they were doing other games, so they had to have the olive branch. Is it possible to make an MMO that can be sold as a game and not a service? No. Because if it's a game, it has, remember, an MMORPG has to have repeatability. Again, right now in Final Fantasy 14, I don't have to log in. I'm done with the main story quest. There's nothing for me until the next batch of content dumps to get us ready for the next DLC. I only keep my subscription because I happen to have a house and I don't want to lose my house. I keep my subscription because I log in periodically when I'm bored. What else am I playing? Crusader Kings 3. They just put out a new DLC. I've been playing the new DLC as much as I can between politics streams and gaming videos. It's amazing. I love the new DLC. If I wasn't doing this show right now, I would have played Crusader Kings 3 for 12 or 16 hours today. Now, they're selling a game, but they're also selling a service. That sounds more like you're playing it as a game as opposed to a service, though. I am playing Final Fantasy 14 as a game as opposed to a service. But I'm not the average player, right? Because most average players don't have disposable income to not give a shit about us. I didn't play Final Fantasy from the time I beat Endwalker to like 4 weeks ago. I paid a year's worth of subscription to not play a game. Most other people click off the subscription. And then somebody mentioned earlier, a lot of people move between Final Fantasy, Guild Wars, and WoW. I've done all the content in WoW. I stop my WoW subscription. I go over to Final Fantasy. I play Final Fantasy till I'm done with all the content. I turn off my subscription and then I go play Guild Wars 2 because it's free. But I never give Guild Wars 2 any money. But I'll buy the next expansion pack, but that's the only money they'll ever get out of me. Those games then aren't getting your money. Those services aren't getting the money. You're not helping them pay for developers or lights or rent or payroll or infrastructure. And if you're not helping pay for that, then the big problem becomes who's paying for the content? What about buy once, service forever model? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Who pays for the servers? And again, I'm a condescending fuck when I have to be. People need to realize that the server costs are in the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars per server. That is why Blizzard originally had their own server farm, and even Blizzard outsourced their server costs because it is cheaper to have a professional server company run your server than it is for you to try to run your server in-house. The problem becomes and this is really where we get monetization, is that sub problem of, is the genre dying, right? So you have box price, you have sub, right? You have cash shop, and you have microtransactions. Now, cash shop and microtransactions, when you can have cosmetics over here, right? And then you have inventory, you have boosts, which are pay to win, you have character slots, right? Microtransactions, well, I mean, you have microtransactions to make up the difference and sell larger DLC. Guild Wars 2 is one of the biggest MMOs, and it doesn't have any subscription model. You're right. Guild Wars 2 is one of the biggest MMOs. But the difference between Guild Wars 2 and Final Fantasy or WoW is about 4.5 million people. Right? There's about 4.5 million people. If Guild Wars 2 has 500,000 concurrent players, that's a generous number. That's a generous number. Guild Wars 2 has maintenance. Yeah, Guild Wars 2 has microtransactions that bring in a fuck ton of money. Right? So Guild Wars 2 uses these two models. Final Fantasy uses these three models. WoW uses these three models. How many people are playing Guild Wars 2 and saying, man, this game really needs more players to feel like an MMO? A lot. A lot, actually. A lot of people playing Guild Wars 2, their chief complaint is, I can't find anybody to play with. There's not enough people doing the open world content. I played for 45 minutes and I never saw another person. Yeah, that's literally one of the most common complaints. There's not enough people. There's not enough players. I can't find a group. I can't find a guild. It's like when I was playing Mortal Online and the starter area is sharded, but it doesn't tell me right away, hey, just so you know, the starter area is sharded, so if you don't see any other players, don't panic. When you get to the real world, that's where all the players are. I have to get to max level before any of my guild will even talk to me. I have to get to max level before a guild will even invite me. That's because the player base is too fractured. There's no way 500,000 people aren't enough to feel like an MMO. You're right. It's because the player base is too fractured. It doesn't matter how many people you have. If it doesn't feel like an MMO, it doesn't feel like an MMO. And if it doesn't feel like an MMO, the developers have done something wrong. The developers have built something poorly because it doesn't feel like an MMO. EVE Online doesn't feel like an MMO if your 7 jumps into a pipe in 0-0. You could go days without seeing another player. But if you go to Jita, when your computer is screaming for mercy, it's gonna feel like an MMO, right? And the other thing you have to remember is player count is relevant to development. If you've only got 500,000 people playing and 10% of those people are making microtransaction purchases, then you've got a box price and 50,000 people supporting your game. I've never made a microtransaction purchase in Guild Wars 2. I could have, and it would have made my life easier. I never have, right? That's where you start to get the whole whale theory. Games that have microtransactions generally turn out to be very poor because of whaling. Where meanwhile, what really kind of sold me on why I'm going to take a look at this game is, can I buy in-game items with real money. No, Eternal Tombs is a microtransaction free game. Cosmetics and pay to win items are not available by purchase. All gear, experience, cosmetics, and gameplay items are earned through in-game efforts and solely through those means. Do you have a Kickstarter? Nope. How can I support the game? Share it. It's only on PC. Where can I purchase the game? How many classes? They had. How much will it cost? Eternal Tombs will be a box price with an optional sub. Subscriptions will be those for 2 or more characters, right? If you want 2 or more characters, you have to have a sub. Honestly, if the sub doesn't give any advantages other than just having another character slot, if I wanted 2 characters, I would just buy 2 copies of the game, right? The root issue is people are really having with Guild Wars 2 isn't there enough people. It's that there aren't enough people playing how they want to play. No, that's not a different issue. Because your issue, you don't care how people are playing. You don't have people to play with. That's the problem. You're trying to shift you're literally trying to blame the person with the problem, and don't do that. A person who has a problem isn't the problem. If a person says, I have to play the game to max level before I get to interact with other people, that's a valid problem. Yeah, and 500,000 people on 20 servers is 25K per server, and you've got 24 hours. If you're going to assume everyone plays for 2 hours, you have 15, and yeah, you got about 2,000 people online on a server at any given time. That's the problem. You're looking at as 500,000 people playing 24/7. You've got about 500,000 people playing your game, split across all the servers, split across all the zones. I mean, there's been times I've played Guild Wars 2 and not seen another person for 10 or 15 minutes. There's been times I've played Guild Wars 2 and all I see is other people. Well, that's a problem with MMOs. It has to feel like a populated world. And it's not about how you feel it is. It's about how the other guy feels it is. And what you did right there is you literally blamed another person for a problem. And that's what so many gamers do. They're dismissive of the problem because it's not a problem in your perception. Well, it's a problem though. Guild Wars 2, if it had 10 million players, do you think expansion packs would come faster if Guild Wars 2 had 10 million players? And the answer is yes. Because if you had 10 million people buy an expansion pack for $50, and now you've got $500 million, money equals development. Money equals developers. Money equals artists and animators and story writers and quest writers and programmers and coders and marketing people to try to get 12 million people. Yeah, it's the company's fault for fragmenting the player base so much, but sometimes, and we also have to remember, everybody has a different linear start time. That's the other problem. ArcAge ran into this problem. If you didn't play ArcAge at the launch of a fresh start server, you probably aren't going to see anybody until 55. You sure as shit aren't going to get a spot in Crimson Rift, Grimghast Rift, Luska's Abyssal, Mistmarrow. Well, Mistmarrow if you get auto sorted. But if somebody sees you're level 30 at Mistmarrow, 32, they're just going to kick you out. And they're going to say, you got to give up your spot to somebody relevant. And that's the other problem. And I've talked about this in the past. Fresh start servers are a problem because it draws too much of the player base away from existing servers. Yeah, figuring out how to get veteran players into beginner zones would be great. What would be better is not having zones. Not having zones specifically designated as new player or established. Ashes of Creation is attempting to do this. Ashes is attempting to do this through their node system, where every node is going to have content available for every range of level. Well, the higher level the node, the higher the broader the range of content available. That's a possibility. If it works, well, that remains to be seen and tested. I think another game that, what happened to MMORPGs? Chrono Odyssey. What the fuck happened with Chrono Odyssey? It was literally, this game is here and this game is coming out, and then all of a sudden, we didn't get any more news, right? Chrono Odyssey is confirmed to be an Unreal Engine 5. It's confirmed to be cross-console, right? We don't have any other details. Chrono Odyssey is slated to release this year. Now, hopefully, because it's going to be coming out on PlayStation, hopefully we can get some leaky leaks, because PlayStation often leaky leaks launches as they put together their release schedule for the year. But this was another game, right? Oh, you can't zoom in on this particular one. Cetera is a land full of unexplored regions with rewards and riches yet unknown. Let your courage carry you to new regions. Yeah. We want explore the endless open world. The endless. I have a feeling Phelan is going to walk in one direction and then prove it's not endless, right? I do like the fact that they've got 5 opposing powers. I mean, they've got 5 opposing powers, and one of them is the broken and one of them is the void. You already know that these two are going to be overpowered because the edgelords. Chronotector, an artifact that manipulates space and time. And then we got concept art. The subscription feature will be temporarily suspended until the official website design is complete. It may be resumed upon completion. Please be advised that personal information collected and stored on this website has been destroyed in accordance with the Personal Information Protected Act of South Korea. In short answer to the stream title, yes. Yeah, I have, I put out a video on Is the Genre Waiting to Die? I've put out a couple of YouTube videos about, Is the Genre Waiting to Die? But yeah, I completely forgot Chrono Odyssey in the when I talked about Is the Genre Dying. I didn't put Chrono Odyssey in there. Chrono Odyssey is supposed to be coming this year, right? Late this year. Action combat game, but if I remember correctly, the big complaint people had about this was it was also set to be playable on mobile. And I think that's another thing. MMORPGs should not be on mobile. Period. MMORPGs should not be on mobile. The genre is dying because devs can't seem to figure out how to make a game that's actually fun, which isn't aggressively overrun with invasive microtransactions. Yep. Warhead42 is a longtime MMORPG player. He's also a streamer. Shares a lot of the same opinions on me in gaming. Microtransactions need to get the fuck out of MMORPGs. MMORPGs should be simple. Box price, mandatory sub, call it a day, Bob's your uncle, have the accountant count the money. Well, what about the people that can't afford to pay a monthly sub? You can afford to pay a monthly sub. It falls into the same category of what I say about Netflix. If you can't afford to pay a monthly sub for your video game, then that means you don't have the time to be playing a video game, and you need to put your priorities in order. Well, I'm just a kid. Well, you should be studying. If you're a kid and you want to pay, yeah, if you can't afford $15 a month, you need to reevaluate what you're doing with your life. Well, I'm just a kid. Well, then rake leaves, mow grass, shovel snow, walk dogs, save a bunch of money, then put it towards your MMORPG fund. Because I always say this to people. You have a PlayStation 5, but you can't afford a $15 a month sub. You have a $2,000+ gaming PC with a $300+ monitor. You can't afford a gaming sub? Well, then what are you doing with your life? Now, the only people I will admit, there is one category of people that can't afford, may not be able to afford $15 a month. And what I will say is, I will say those people fall into the disabled category. And those people are in a shitty category because when you're on a fixed income, you literally can't go earn more money. When you're on a fixed disability income, you can't go earn more money because if you go earn more money, then if you go earn more money this month, they take away money next month and expect you to earn. With that said, those people, I do apologize. You're kind of in a shitty lot in life, but even then, you need to then be focusing on your life. How do we find you $15 more a month, right? There's no more bang for the buck than online gaming. It's literally the go-to entertainment on a budget, right? If you want an online game and you have Netflix, get rid of the Netflix and online game. And then get there's all the free streaming services now that have ads. Big fucking deal. Those of us that were born in the 70s and the 80s understand what adverts are. They used to remember when adverts used to cut out part of the movie? You'd literally get back from the commercial break and they didn't fucking stop the movie to put the advertisements in. It's a 2-hour movie in a 2-hour slot, so you knew the adverts were going to be on top. Ad blocks are also a thing if that's not your bag, except some of these free streaming services, literally they have it set up so that the ad, the movie is an ad as far as the ad blocker detects. So if you're running an ad blocker, you can't watch it because it blacks out the show too, or blacks out the TV. Truthfully, if you can't afford to buy shit, yeah, there are other options, and I'm not going to advocate those either. But if you can't afford to pay for shit, watch the damn advertising. It's like if you have a favorite YouTuber or Twitch streamer, fucking turn off your ad blocker because that's how they're getting paid. They're getting paid by YouTube or Google or Alphabet or Twitch or Amazon so that you don't have to pay them. Turn off ad blockers when it comes to content creators. I mean, leave your ad blocker on for me. I don't give a shit. But for other ones, what else we got? We talked about New World. New World kept promising. New World kept promising it was going to get better and better and better and better. New World Season of the Guardian. Major updates. New seasonal trial. Winter Runeforge. Can we talk about something here? Seasons. Seasons are great. Seasons are awesome. Seasons are that core of what I'm talking about. You have to have a feature. You have to have a feature in your game that gets people to log in every day. I am not against the idea of a battle pass. I am not against the idea of a battle pass. I'm the fuck against the battle pass that has a premium tier that you have to pay more money for. But I'm not against the idea of a battle pass so that the more you play, the more reward you get. Just as long as, again, we focus the season on an idea that's doable, right? So if we have a battle pass, that should run for 2 months, right? A battle pass should run for 2 months. As long, and in 2 months, we're going to say you have 60 login days. And I know some months don't. because of February, and some have more because of 31 days in a month. But we're just going to say the battle pass runs for 2 months, 60 days. If it's January, February, then it's going to be less than 60. If it's March, April, it's going to be 61, right? But I think that it should run for the 2 months, but it should be doable in 2/3 the time, right? So you should be able to do it in 40 out of 60 days. I think every single day logging in is terrible. So do I think seasons are great? Yes. Anything seasonal. Join up to 10 max level players in a bone-chilling gauntlet of increasingly difficult enemies. The seasonal trial requires teamwork to overcome rune puzzles, slay an icy construct, and fell an ancient ice guardian for unique rewards. That's cool. It's limited time. It's FOMO. It's fear of missing out. So it gets you to log in. It gets you to play. New artifacts, great. New season pass. Season passes are great. Cooking and other trade skill changes, upgraded combat and animation system, controller support, main story quest fully updated. So yeah, it looks like they're trying. And now you got seasonal events. Oh, okay, seasonal trial, seasonal events, the public test realm. But here's the problem. Is New World really going to be able to save itself? One major drawback of MMOs in general is players are voracious when it comes to content. It literally takes 10 times longer to create content than to consume it. Yes, and that's I said in the other video I did, because you know these are the things that I'm focusing on right now. The big thing is, are events run by live staff a good MMORPG idea? Right? I think events run by live staff are a great MMORPG idea. You swear we really do think I like you not parodying my videos? That's good. I think events run by live staff are a great MMORPG idea, especially since Eternal Tombs, Two Line Studios has already commented on my big concern, and that's corruption. That is, what do you do if you have a GM that's spawning events off for his friends? And they said, basically, well, we've got like a 2-person approval system, and we're going to be tracking it. How do events like that work? You literally have a event creator, and if you watch the video, I linked their video. I linked my video to talk about why I thought the idea was good. Their video is in the description of the video I linked. That they tell you how they did it. It's a 10-minute video. It's their video is a 10-minute video. You build the event out of a pre-selected menu, and then the event launches. I've said this. I've said this over and over and over again. Live events are great because you build a closet full of events, and then you can throw those at the players, and you vary them just slightly. Like my when I was a storyteller, I had variations of the same event. 12 skeletons, 6 zombies, 3 mummies, a golem, right? And so you have a encounter with the undead, roll a d4. Well, this is what you get. Well, then as I know the power of my players, right? 12 zombies, 12 skeletons becomes 24 skeletons. 1 golem becomes 2 golems. You're watching, like if I'm a GM and I'm in an area and I see a group of people just circular farming, right? Just circular farming, and it looks like, you know, they're doing the time old tradition of grind. I can drop a boss spider on them, right? I don't have to, it doesn't necessarily 1-for-1 have to have an amazing reward. It could have 10 times the reward of a normal spider. But holy shit, now they're in a world that responds to you. I think the biggest problem we have is we get bored to shit, right? With the games we play. But we keep playing them because we're stuck and there's nothing else to go play. I remember EVE Online, I was mindlessly ratting, right? And I'm OCD in EVE. I salvage everything, I scoop everything. I'm just going through and I'm going through and I'm going through. And I'm not really looking. I'm watching a movie and I'm talking to my kid. She's in the bassinet and I'm ratting and I'm salvaging. And I got an officer spawn, which if you play EVE, you know how rare they are. But it wasn't like fucking ta-da. It was just a much larger icon appeared in my overview. I didn't even notice I had it until I saw the loot, right? I got an officer spawn and I got a couple of billion ISK worth of loot, but it wasn't like a, oh shit. I used to say all the time in EVE Online, why do the Serpentis not respond that I've blown up 700 of their ships today? Like, there's so much you can do with live GM. If you set up the live GM tools, and that's what these guys are doing. That's what these guys are doing with their Tomb Master system. So they can open up secret areas, they can spawn treasures, they can change the environment, spawn special monsters, they can trigger pre-built events, they can create raid encounters, they can trigger traps. The list they have, they can spawn a carnival. I mean, sometimes it's not even about giving a massive amount of reward. It's about giving people access to lore or story, and it's how you spoon feed, drip feed lore into the universe. Shit, when I was a storyteller for a LARP, I had people spend 2 or 3 sessions, not at the main night, but 2 or 3 sessions going through a library that was cursed. The curse of the library is none of the parchment paper could leave the room, because at first they started packing up stuff and trying to leave with it, and it all turned to dust. And then they're just sitting there and they're getting little bits of lore. There's so much you can do with actual gamers. It's just like my personal belief. I don't think that in an MMO, I hate Final Fantasy. Because number one, there's no builds in Final Fantasy. There is literally no builds in Final Fantasy 14. A level 90 scholar, you know every ability the level 90 scholar has, because the level 90 scholar will have every ability, assuming they've done all their class quests. You know every ability they're gonna have. I think that is another place where MMORPGs are failing us. Not every level 90 warrior should look exactly the same. The more variety is, the greater the chance of players settling on a well-defined meta. You're right. The more variety there is, the greater the chance of players settling on a well-defined meta. But then you also have the people that don't think outside the box, so they don't read all their abilities. For example, Arcage. How many people didn't run Renewal in Arcage because they thought Renewal was a shitty ability? And then people asked me, they said, why are you using Renewal? And I said, why the shit would I not use Renewal? There is a spell I put on you that has a 25% chance of activating, and every time it activates, I heal you for my biggest heal, and it lasts for 18 seconds. So when you're getting fucking endless arrowed, or you're getting mana starred, or you're getting endless striked, or you're getting triple slashed, Every single time it hits you, so many healers weren't using renewal because they thought because they had listened to somebody make a YouTube video, right? Renewal had a threshold cutoff of usefulness based on time to kill. If the average time to kill was longer than a certain amount, it was great. If people died too quickly, it was not helpful. Except the other problem is that I can put renewal on you. I can put renewal on you before you enter combat. I can pre-buff you going into combat, and then I don't have to try to put it on you when you're fighting. Oh shit, they're about to jump us. Renewal, 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 renewal. Oh, it activated. Okay, cool. And then couples with my old, it buffed with my old school Ode to Recovery. So my renewal is now healing for more than my antithesis, right? No, renewal wasn't mana intensive. It was a cheap throwaway spell. Wasn't mana intensive. I mean, it might have been mana intensive for people that weren't healers. If you were trying to, it was mana intensive for people that weren't getting the bang for the buck out of it. And then when they made it so you could pass renewal with the wave from Witchcraft, everybody gets it. Holy shit. But then, of course, as we know, Arcage turned around and had a huge balance problem, and then turned around and you're thinking of fervent healing, where each heart you throw costs more. So it was like a good chunk. You have one complaint about Ashes of Creation. The toxic degenerates lurking over at their Discord is discouraging anybody new to post over there. Sadage. I'm not gonna really comment about the Ashes of Creation Discord, although I'm still in it. I don't go there. I don't speak there. I'm in it so that any alerts that they post ping over. Plus, since I'm a tester, if they open up a testing channel for whatever reason, I want to be there. Do I think that communities, not just targeting Ashes community, but do I think communities are terrible? Yes. I think communities are gatekeepers, and they don't, and I will speak on the past of the Ashes of Creation Discord. People in the questions channel would get mad if somebody new asked a question because it's been asked 19 times already, but that person wasn't here those 19 times. It's like that movie, Suicide Kings with Christopher Walken. They're like, we've told the story 1,000 times. And he says, well, I didn't hear it that time. If you don't want to answer questions in the question channel, stay the fuck out of the questions channel. If you don't want to help people that come to a Discord, then don't fucking try to help them. But the same thing happened in Mortal Online 2. Luckily, the Mortal Online 2 community told their other people to shut the hell up. I had a handful of people come over to my stream when I was playing Mortal Online 2 and start telling me, you can't have that opinion, or you're trying to kill the soul of a game. You don't play it enough you shouldn't have this opinion yet because you don't have enough time in the game. It's like, look, dude, the combat sucks. I don't have to play the combat for 5 hours to tell you the combat sucks. I also can tell you the combat sucks because the developer was already here, and I've already talked to the developer, and I've already said the combat. I didn't say the combat sucks to the developer. I said the combat's a little rough. It's not intuitive. It's not like Moradu or Chivalry 2. It's action combat, but it's directional action combat, but it's not good directional combat. And the developer was like, yeah, we understand. We're revamping the combat. And this is the problem with members of a community. A member of a community is yelling at a new player, telling the new player he can't have the opinion he has. Meanwhile, the developer of the game has already come in and talked to the new player who said, yes, I recognize your concern, and that's why we're changing the combat. If the combat was good in the developer's eyes, they wouldn't be changing it. If you find it okay for me to praise the game in the first 30 minutes of playing it, I should also be allowed to shit on it in the first 30 minutes. I think it's okay to have critiques about the game in the first 30 minutes, but I really do think that you should have 5 hours in the game before you shit on it. Not defending it, but there are some games that you got to kind of push through the first couple of hours to find the flow. Now, with that said, if I, as a new player, yeah, you can, and if you can give a valid reason for why it's bad, then that's not shitting on it. That's giving constructive criticism. Yeah, if the intro isn't good, I'm not getting there. That's the problem. How dare you discredit all the time I've spent in this game than you? Well, right. But also, how dare you play a game for 4,000 hours then not recommend it on Steam? I don't recommend the game. It's not very good. I've played it for 4,000 hours. Motherfucker, you've played the game for almost 2 full years of employment. In more modern games, I quite miss the skill variety. I used to play Elyon back in the day where I'd have 30 skills. The more modern games I play have pretty much all the skills and no variety aside from stance. Right. And that's where we start to get into where you got to have a well-defined vocabulary, because you have class and then you have build, right? And these are not synonyms, because class is mage, class is healer, right? Class is tank. And then you can have a build. You could have a sword and board tank. You could have a two-hander tank. You could have a dual wield, right? And this is a parry tank. And this is a parry tank. And this is a block tank. But then you could also have a two-hander as an evasion tank. Or this could be the evasion tank, right? And that's another thing people have to recognize. There is a difference between build and class. Now, in Arcage, you could have somebody playing a cleric with a completely different build than somebody else playing a cleric. Or you could have a game like Rift where a chloromancer, there's 2 ways to build a chloromancer. The right way and every other way. Chloromancer in Rift is literally a two button class. And I hate to say it, but it's literally a 2-button class, and if you're not playing with those 2 buttons, you're doing it wrong. And by wrong, I mean suboptimal, right? If you're the number 1 or number 2 healer and the number 5 damage on the same character, and the character's capable of that, then that's the right way to do it. Any other way to do it is wrong. I think another game coming out that bears a lot of looking at is Ashes of Creation. Now, I will be completely honest. I haven't watched an Ashes of Creation video since the Freehold one. Will I watch them as we get closer? Yes. As we get closer to Ashes of Creation Alpha 2, which is supposed to be Q3 of this year, I will absolutely watch all of the old videos. I will try to get caught up. But the problem is, I didn't want to spend every day of my life learning and unlearning and relearning a bunch of things, and then ultimately, like somebody said, not being able to discuss it with people and saying, I think this is a problem. Like Balefire said, do you guys think this is a problem? Because if you say it's like all the people who are shiny white knights who think everything is the greatest thing since Betty White. Well, then when the game is received poorly, those people are then going to browbeat the shit out of anybody with a complaint. But the truth is, they should browbeat themselves. Hey, I told you this was going to be a problem. I tried to bring up this was going to be a problem. It's like Arcage, for example. Hey guys, you're launching the Fresh Start server, and the candle is still a problem, and the orb in Mahadevi is still a problem. It'll be okay. Another game in development that I think is struggling is Pantheon, right? I think Pantheon is struggling greatly. I know that they're moving into season 1 for the VIPs. It's been an exciting month for Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, We have officially introduced seasons, and we now have our VIP testers in the pass, the most recent zone to open back up in Terminus. We're preparing the way for our champions and supporters to join the testing in March, and look forward to introducing this new content to a fresh crop of testers. Pantheon lost its vision when Brad McQuaid died. I would not disagree with you, but I would also say I would like to believe that the company can survive the death of any one particular staff member. If it can't, that's a problem. If you can't survive the loss of a staff member, then you didn't have a very good team to begin with. The team, because by the time you get into development, what should really be the case is everything should be documented. Yeah, he's the founder, he's the creative director and visionary for the game, but everything should have been documented. Because people need to know what your vision is, right? People need to understand the vision before you ever start doing anything, right? I'm not going to say it's not sad. I'm not going to say it's not terrible, because it is. You know, you don't want to see any developers. You don't want to see any developers die. You don't want people to die in their prime. But if they do, if you set up your company properly, the company should be able to survive beyond you, right? I think it's a little bit different for like a streamer, because a streamer is their product, right? The streamer is the product. But any other company should be able to survive the death of any person involved. Another one that I think a lot of people are going to remember is Camelot Unchained. I think honestly, and I'm not trying to shit on City State Entertainment, but can we just be honest for a second? I saw that they had their most anticipated game, but they don't tell you those years. Camelot Unchained isn't even expected to launch. Most people think Camelot Unchained is Dunsky, that it's not coming. I love the idea of Camelot Unchained. I love the idea that they, however many years ago, a decade ago now, that they understood that the idea of a two-faction game wasn't going to work anymore. So they knew a decade ago. Yeah, I think it was 2013. They knew a decade ago things that they needed to change. But, it is what it is. And I think we're past faction-based games now. I think we are past faction-based games. Yeah, Crowfall launched and shut down to little fanfare because really Crowfall was bad. I played Crowfall. Crowfall was bad. There wasn't anything good about it. And generally I try to find something good in every game, right? Do you think there's a portion of MMOR players that are, metaphorically speaking, walking into McDonald's and getting mad that they won't sell a pizza? I mean, nowadays it feels like people act that there's something wrong with the game if it's not made for your taste. No. I think a big problem is this. I think you're in the right ballpark, but I think you're placing the blame on the wrong people. So we know this heading. We know what this is, right? And nobody really disagrees on that. They disagree with some characteristics. How many people does it have to be in one place? How many people have to be playing total for it to be massive? How many people have to be playing in one place at a time for it to be an MMO, right? People disagree on what the role is. Is a changeable main class a mandatory, or do you have to have a fixed main class? Can a tank be a tank and a damage dealer, or does a tank have to be a tank, right? The other thing is I think everybody agrees, and I think everybody agrees that this is the recipe for proven success, but this is the direction most MMORPG players want the genre to go. And what I mean by that is you want your choice to matter. You want your choice to actually matter. Is there anything wrong with Final Fantasy XIV in its design philosophy? No. Is there anything wrong with Final Fantasy XIV with its design? Yes. A 2.5 second global cooldown to start was fucking terrible. You can skill speed the shit out of your character, but you still can't get your global cooldown down much below like 1.9. And that's if you go straight everything to skill speed and every person in the party is buffing to support skill speed. Do you think MMOs are dead due to cultural changes, people wanting instant gratification, not wanting to grind time requirements? Yes, absolutely. I think MMORPGs are dead because different genre games give them the instant dopamine hit. For example, Heroes of the Storm has 2 modes. I play Heroes of the Storm because I was told to put my hands in a blender when I was playing League of Legends. Heroes of the Storm has 2 modes. One is their normal match. One is their all random, all middle. There are literally people who complain about a 12-minute, 15-minute match. People are literally mad about a 12-minute match. I had a guy quit the other day because our comp was a late game comp. We had our 3 damage dealers were all quest stack damage dealers. And a guy literally threw a fit because the tank was throwing a fit because he's like, we have no damage. And I'm like, no shit, we have no damage. All 3 of us need to stack. We are a late game team. He ended up quitting. We got a bot. We played with the bot for 15 minutes. The guy logged back in and he's like, oh my God, you guys are... And then he's like, wait, we're winning. Yeah, because I'm playing Zeebs and I got to get my spiders done, right? Whatever the guy... Falstead has got 190 stacks of his hammer, and now Artanis has 550 stacks. Yeah, we're a late game team, you fucking dumbass. We're facing a team that has 2 of the most powerful DPS out of the box that have no quests to do. Right? You're absolutely right. MMOs are dead because of cultural changes. People want instant gratification. People want TikToks. There's a person who complained about I was in the Final Fantasy discussion. Somebody had never played Final Fantasy before, and they got mad that there was 45 minutes of cutscenes at the end of A Realm Reborn. Right? The biggest weakness of late game comps is falling behind early and snowballing out of control. Exactly. Right? But the biggest strength of late game comps is when you play slow, you play methodical, and then all of a sudden, when everybody hits their stacks and their quests and it's literally like, I have an ability that every time you attack me, I spawn a spider at you. And my spider does 600 damage to you, plus 396. So you hit me late game, you hit me after level 20, and I do a minimum of 936 damage to you, and you only have 2,800 hit points. Every 3 seconds you hit me, a spider's gonna go after your ass. And that's assuming that I don't do any damage to you on my own. People gotta be patient. You can't change human nature. Absent of self-discipline, we're all going to tend towards the fastest dopamine hit. No. It's not true. I don't go for the easy dopamine hit because I set goals for myself. I set goals for myself. And the goal for myself is I want to be the best geared mage on the server. I want to be this. I want to be this. Yeah, you watched a vid about the meta for League of Legends in Korea, where they focus on quick matches and early game comps and ruthlessly bully anyone that tries to play something else. Exactly. What are your thoughts on expanding MMOs to console? Moving MMORPGs to console was a stupid fucking decision. And here's why. You can reasonably bind 28 keys to a controller, right? So I got my little controller here. I have, right? I have triangle, square, X, and O. So that's 4. And then I have L1 plus those 4. That's 8. L2, those 4. That's 12. R1, 16. R2, 20. And then I can bind 21, 22, 23, 24. Right? And then if I don't need to target 26, 27, 28, 29, right? Because the press down. If you're setting up, yeah, that's 2 hotbars. I normally play with 6. Final Fantasy 14 is the only discussion you need to have about why cross PC to console is bad for MMOs. Final Fantasy 14, every time we get a new expansion, we lose abilities. We have to lose abilities because there's not enough bindable hotbars for the controller. I love the idea of opening up your game to the largest market possible. But Crusader Kings 3 is another good one. I love Paradox Interactive Games. I love Crusader Kings 3. I think it's an amazing game. The problem here is there's a guy playing on PlayStation and he can't use mods. Now, I know some people's opinion of mods, and what some people say is if a game needs to be modded by the community, it's not a very good game. And I don't disagree with you, but I don't agree with you either. Because there are some things the developer doesn't want you to be able to do. So what they do is they don't allow you to do it. But they recognize that a small percentage of the population may want to do it anyway, so they allow the game to be modded. But Crusader Kings 3 without mods is way different than it is with mods. In fact, that company has just paid a guy for one of his mods because he did such a good job. And they said, we want to take all of your hard work, we want to integrate it directly into the game because you've done what we would have done. Right? And now you try to put it on console where you're not allowed to do any modding. Well, that creates a different environment. Is the best controller player going to be better than the best keyboard and mouse player? I don't know. And I don't want to make that call. But what I will tell you is that the the top people may alternate between keyboard, mouse, controller, keyboard, mouse, controller, keyboard, PC, console. But I'll tell you, once you get out of the top people, in the middle, the top of the middle is going to be keyboard and mouse players. Because when you start to talk about the best of the average, keyboard and mouse is just going to be superior. I also think that there's some problems with putting MMORPGs on consoles, because how many people have the keyboard and mouse, or you don't necessarily need the mouse. How many people have the keyboard for the PlayStation? The biggest thing we want to do is we want to make MMORPG social again, and to have social again, we have to be able to communicate. And to communicate, we have to be able to type. Now, some people are going to say, well, we could just have in-game voice. No, I don't want in-game voice, because I want to have out-of-game voice with my guild so I can bullshit with the people that I want to bullshit with. I want to be able to bullshit with the people I want to bullshit with. Those are called my friends. That is called my social circle. If you need me and we're standing next to each other, you need to type to me. I was trying out Mortal Online. I thought it was good. I thought Mortal Online 2 was good. I didn't stream it a second time. I lost my voice on that Saturday. But what I will say is, I want to replay it when they do the new tutorial. I did have a very nice conversation with the developer. The developer seemed to take a lot of the things I said to heart, including magic not being in the tutorial. I will say this, I did look up how to get involved in magic, and it was so daunting. And then I went and talked to people who have quit Mortal Online 2 specifically and said, why did you quit? And the thing I got all the time was the tutorial was like kindergarten. And then I felt like I went from kindergarten math to calculus, and there was no in between. Is this Ashes of Creation? I mean, I talked about Ashes of Creation a little bit. This isn't specifically Ashes. This is MMORPGs in general. Today's topic is kind of, is the MMORPG genre dying, and what happened to all the games we were expecting, right? Speaking of which, the next one up is ArcH 2. ArcH 2 confirmed another delay and a focus from large-scale functional PvP to small group PvE and guild PvP. This is becoming, I mean, this is the new fucking reality, and this is what gamers are going to have to accept. The majority of people do not want non-consensual open world PvP, no matter what level of punishment you put on it. I'll say that again. The majority of players, the majority, do not want non-consensual open world PvP, no matter what level of punishment you want on it. Done. We're finished. You can say that's not true. It's not, you're going to say it's not true because you don't want it to be true. You have to make open world PvP optional, opt-in, and rewarding. And if you don't do that, you'll continue to have games that have populations that look like this. That's what you're going to have, right? That's what you're going to have. Or you're going to have games that look like that, right? Because, hey, lucky number 7. Our XL Games has recognized where they lost their player base. If you go into a PvP zone, you're opting into PvP regardless of how necessary it is to go into those zones. Yes, technically, if you go into a PvP zone, you are opting into PvP regardless of how necessary it is to go into those zones. Except you didn't opt in. The developer forced you to go in. The developer forced you into that zone. And so at that point, it's not a choice. At that point, what you're trying to do at that point is the illusion of choice. And you can't have the illusion of choice. Choice has to matter. Choice, if you fuck with people's free will, you do so at your peril, right? And that is where that is ultimately where you're going to fail, right? You are ultimately going to fail because you've not only, forced is probably a bit too strong. I think railroaded. Well, I mean, if you have to go into a zone, right? If you have to go into a zone to accomplish something, you were forced to go into that zone. You literally, people say, oh, but you don't have to go into the PvP zones in Arcage in order to level. Yeah, you do. Because the quest chain takes you through them, right? The quest chain literally says you have to go there. And if you don't go there, you can't level. I'm going to say MMOs should never do sequels unless you've absolutely reached the limit of your engine. I don't necessarily agree with you. It's not about the matter. It's not about the reaching the limit of your engine. It's sometimes you need to recognize how many people have played your game. What was your player retention? What was your player acquisition? Like, I think EVE Online is foolish. A 20-year game with a 20-year heritage, with 20 years of development. I think EVE Online, I think CCP is incredibly foolish and short-sighted for not opening up a new cluster. I think EVE Online is completely, I think CCP is completely dopey for not opening up a new cluster, considering this number, right? Considering this number, and you're gonna see it, right? Considering the fact that Star Citizen has raised $668 million, I think CCP is foolish for not opening up a new EVE cluster where everybody starts over. Because there's 5.1 million people looking to play Star Citizen, right? Unless, if they open up a new cluster, then they lose one of the core aspects of their marketing, a single world with everyone, no shards or servers. That's not true because they already opened a second one. China had its own. So, boom, right there. The world didn't fall apart because China had its own server. The problem is how many people have tried EVE and left for the number one reason of I can never catch up because I'm 21 years behind. Their response is, oh, we're going to put in skill injectors. And people are like, yeah, but I'm not going to spend $1,500 to catch up. Mortal Online 2's main problem is slow progress and content. Hopefully now with Unreal Engine 5 in place, they can patch faster. No, Mortal Online 2's main problem has nothing to do with their content. Mortal Online 2's main problem is, number one, their combat. Their combat is terrible. The developer said they're revamping the combat. Number two, Mortal Online 2's second biggest problem is their player retention rate. Their free trial should help them with that. Mortal Online 2 also has a server ping problem where they have one server and it's 300 ping. Well, that's a problem, right? But yeah, I think CCP is incredibly foolish for not opening up EVE Online 2 and having a new fresh server. And yeah, you do cannibalize your players. You cannibalize some of them, but some of these games are at so low of a population. If you have an MMO with 1 million players and you're only going to end up converting 500,000 of them to the sequel, you're going to end up with 2 games with half a pop. Yeah, except that's never how it's going to work, right? That isn't even remotely how it's going to function, right? So if you have an MMO with 1 million people playing on it, right? And this is Sprocketville 1, right? This isn't the number I care about, right? I don't care about that number. I don't give a fuck how many people are playing my game. What I care about is a number that looks like this, that 27 million people have tried the game, and I was only able to retain, right? Because I had a population of 500,000, and then it grew to 1 million, which means I was only able to retain a fraction of the player base. I was only able to retain 1.8% of my players, right? The number of games with that kind of population today is very limited. What? A number of games that have had 27 million people try the game? That's not limited. Over the course of 10 years of a game, shit, Final Fantasy crossed over 30 million. There's a difference between, of course, we got to talk about, are we talking about a free-to-play game or a box price game? Because, yes. Oh, 1 million active players? Yeah, there's 4 that I can think of. You've got Final Fantasy and WoW with fluctuating between 3.5 and 6 million, depending on where we are in the spike. You've got ESO and Guild Wars 2, which are at 500,000 to 1 million. Guild Wars 2 would be number 4. They're between 500,000 and 1 million, based on how many expansion packs they sell. And a lot of it's extrapolated data, because you have to look at earnings. You have to look at the company's earnings statement and then figure out, well, if they made this much money on, if ArenaNet made this much money on Guild Wars 2, you know. I bought Guild Wars 2 when it launched in 2012. I did not like it. Everything just felt wrong to me. Yeah, Guild Wars 2 is a very, very interesting game. Immersion is very hard in that game. It is very hard to get immersed. It is what it is. But to switch back to Arc Age 2 here for a second, Arc Age 2 confirms another delay and a focus from large-scale functional PvP to small group PvE and guild PvP. People don't have to like that this is really what players want, but it's what players want. You can either choose, right, to change your focus, or you can choose to have low populations. Those are choices. And I'm really tired of arguing the point with people when they say, well, you don't understand. I'm like, but I do understand. The trick here is you don't want to accept the reality. The reality is what the customer is buying is this. What the customer isn't buying is that. The only games that should consider sequel reboots are the ones that have popular brand appeal but small declining populations. Yeah, and I would agree with that, right? I understand why Blizzard doesn't want to do a World of Sanctuary. Why they don't want to do a full-blown Diablo MMORPG. Because a full-blown Diablo MMORPG built in a modern engine with modern graphics, with modern animation, with seamless worlds and no loading, and the Diablo IP would hurt the shit out of World of Warcraft. And World of Warcraft has, what, 3 more expansions planned? And at the rate that they've sold expansions, that's $2 billion. WoW doesn't want to get rid of, or Blizzard doesn't want to get rid of WoW, because they're looking at $2 billion plus sub money. So they're looking at close to $3 billion. when you factor in store purchases and WoW tokens and all that, Blizzard literally is looking at the next 6 years and looking at in excess of 3 billion in revenue. So they don't want to release World of Sanctuary to compete with that. You're absolutely right. Nor should they. Yoshi P, when it comes to Final Fantasy, Yoshi P has said we should not even be thinking about a new Final Fantasy MMORPG because we just got 14 to where it's good. We just got 14 to where it's considered good. We shouldn't be talking about a new MMO. Now, given how long an MMORPG should take in development, I think they should be thinking of one, because that way they can spend 10 years on it. And in 10 years, will Final Fantasy 14 be done? Yeah, I think Final Fantasy 14 will be done in 10 years, right? Let's see. We talked about Riot's MMO. We talked about PAX Day. I think one IP that is absolutely ideal for a reboot is EverQuest. Rich history, tons of lore, but the game population is small, aging, and declining. It would be easier bringing in high quantities of new players with a brand new game. Yes, and they tried to do that. They tried to do that with EverQuest Next. And they tried to do something new, but the problem is they tried to take that step to an immersive sandbox, but they didn't take baby steps towards an immersive sandbox. They tried to go all the way the fuck balls to the wall on an immersive sandbox, and that's just not going to work either. You know, you got to ease people into it. You got to slowly walk the people into a brand new style or method. You can't just say, bazinga, here's a new fucking style of game. Then again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think John Schmedley was still running the house at Sony when EverQuest Next flopped. And John Schmedley needs to retire and stay the fuck out of video game development. Let's see. We talked about Eternal Tombs. I'm going to be covering Eternal Tombs a little bit more. Before I talk about Eternal Tombs, the game, the next video I'm gonna do is on microtransactions. So if you guys are here and you didn't realize that I've been going back to making YouTube videos, if you're not subbed, go sub. And if you haven't been watching the shit that I make, watch the shit that I make and comment on it. Like, tell me what you think, because the next half a dozen videos are going to be very few on games themselves. It's going to be on concepts and topics. And I love your opinions. Let's see. We also had the failure that is Fractured. I love Fractured. These people are near and dear to my heart. These people are near and dear to my heart. Prometheus is a great guy. I think they had an amazing idea for their world. The problem is that they tried to launch their game without all the people there. Yeah, Fractured used Gamigo and it equaled death. And in fact, I did a video where outright what I said was, did Gamigo make a deal, or did Fractured make a deal with the devil when they picked Gamigo? Yeah, Gamigo needs to recognize you're not trustworthy. You're not a trustworthy company. And if you try to be anything other than we're gonna sit here for a bunch of minutes. If you try to not understand that you are an untrustworthy company, then you're never gonna make any progress. Like, I don't even know what's on Gamigo's roster of games right now. Let me see. Gamigo has Trove, Fiesta North America, Rift, Desert Operations, and War Game 1942. Right? Trove, Fiesta, Rift, Yeah. You have 5 games on your roster. Nobody trusts you. The reason why nobody trusts you is you literally steal people's money. You steal their credits in games that they paid for, right? The other one, Fractured is free to play this weekend. I hope Fractured can, you know, make some progress, but you know, I don't think they can. Yeah, and 2 of those games, Rift and Trail, are former Tryon World games. And then last but not least, the granddaddy of them all when it comes to scams, you've got Chronicles of Illyria. Chronicles of Illyria was a terrible fucking travesty in how that came out. Literally, the only reason why Chronicles of Illyria didn't get completely obliterated in the lawsuit is because the lawyer that sued them fucked up. And if you remember, I said it outright. I called this one. The lawyer that sued Chronicles of Illyria and Exola sued them both in California and brought Exola into it because Chronicles of Illyria, Soban Studio, said we have no money. So the lawyer sued in California where Exola is, and Chronicles of Illyria, Jeremy Walsh Caspian, his lawyer walked into court and said, well, Your Honor, we're not a California company. We don't do business in California. The courts of California don't have jurisdiction over us. And the judge said, you're absolutely right. I can't hear a case about, I think it's an Oregon or a Washington-based company. It's Washington. Said, I can't hear a case based on a Washington-based company, right? And so, it got dismissed. And then when they got sued in Washington, he was able to turn around and say, well, they're suing Exola down in California, and that has to be resolved first. And when you read the legal document, the lawyer fucked up. The lawyer was not the right attorney for trying to sue a video game company. And now all those players that invested tens of thousands of dollars aren't ever going to get anything. When a company tells you, and again, I said, what's the point of suing a company that has no money? Hey man, I don't have any money. Okay. I'm going to sue you anyway. Okay. Sue me anyway, but I don't have any money. So guess what happens when you sue somebody and they don't have any money? They walk into court with their books and they say, I don't have any money. And the judge is like, okay, you don't have any money. That's the whole point of why I preach all the time. I talk about, you better have a limited liability company. You absolutely better have a limited liability company to limit your liability. Because if they didn't limit their liability, then what would have happened is they would have gone after their house and their cars and everything else. So, I think I'm lucky, but also a little smart that I never got burned supporting any of these games. I got really lucky with Chronicles of Illyria because Chronicles of Illyria, I was gonna back it at a pretty substantial backing package, and then I got tagged for a deployment. So I looked at when the deployment was and when their anticipated testing was, and I said, well, that doesn't, and I wasn't a content creator yet. I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I didn't back, and I got saved on that. I was gonna buy into Camelot Unchained, like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, when they said beta is going to open over 4th of July weekend, I was streaming at that point. I said, oh, I'll buy in, and that way I can stream over the weekend. I can have something, I can have something to do over the weekend. And I said, you know, I think I just want to blow off fireworks for my kids. No, I retired in 17. So, and it was in 16, I think, give or take. When was their Kickstarter? Why the fuck? What did they do? But yeah, their Kickstarter was 16. So yeah, their Kickstarter was May of 16. And then that's when I got stationed here, and then I was gonna get tagged for deployment. And so I was like, well, yoink, let me take that. And then that's another topic for another day, is should MMOs even be allowed to be on Kickstarter? And I'm gonna cover that one in depth. Talk about that one. With that said, I am going to try to talk about MMORPGs in a more general sense. I am going to do a couple of videos on Eternal Tombs. My next video that I'm working on is on microtransactions. Well, the way you could regulate it, just real quick so I don't steal my thunder from my other video or my other thing, but the way you could regulate it is you literally say you cannot put Kickstarters on, or you cannot put MMORPGs on Kickstarter until you have a playable demo, so that the Kickstarter is there for additional stuff, but not to build the core viable product. And before you can go on to Kickstarter with an MMORPG, you have to have a playable demo. And then they just literally say, because, man, we don't want to get sued. But the problem is Kickstarter doesn't give a shit, because it's only ever lost one lawsuit anyway. Anyway, it's nice being here. Nice talking about video games again with people. Nice to see some people showing up. Like I said earlier, I am going to try to do a few more video game stuff. I am going to try to get back to making YouTube videos. I've got a couple up there now. I will see you guys tomorrow for the politics show, and then maybe over the weekend for some gaming. I'll see you next time.